Hello, this is Abdullah Qazi, and welcome to Lesson 7 of Learn Dari. In this lesson, we will learn how to make the plural form of a noun. Now, as you know in English, usually we add an S to the end of a word to make it plural, and in some cases, depending on the ending of a word, we would add ES. So, for example, the plural of door is doors, and the plural of fox is foxes. There are several common irregular nouns in English, such as men or man, which just needs to be memorized. The same can be said about Dari, and I'll explain that later in the lesson. Now, in classical Dari, the general rule for forming plurals is to use ha for inanimate objects and on for animate or living things. So, for example, maze, which means table, would become maze ha, tables, and mard, which means man, would become mardon, which means men. Okay, let's go through some more examples. So examples of when ha is used. Sound. Sada becomes sadaha for sounds. Apple, save becomes sabha for apples. Book, kitab, becomes kitabha for books. Spoon, qashuk, becomes qashukha for spoons. Eyeglasses, oynak, becomes oynakha in the plural form. Eyeglasses is not inherently plural in Dari like it is in the English language. Okay, so examples of when on is used. Afghan or Afghan becomes Afghanon for Afghans. Woman, zan, becomes zanon for women. Girl, dukhtar, becomes dukhtaron for girls. Guest, mehman, becomes mehmanon for guests. Manager, mudir, becomes mudiran for managers. For easier pronunciation, words that end in the long "a" sound like alqa, meaning Mr. or Sir, a yawn is added. So alqa would turn into alqayan, meaning Misters or Sirs. Also, for words that end in the a sound like bacha, the ending gon is used and the hey is removed from the word in writing. So the plural form of bacha would be bachagon. Another example, the plural of parenda, bird, would be parendagon for birds. Now you may see on being used for technically inanimate nouns, but it's mostly used in poetry as a rare exception, as a sort of stylistic effect to make the word carry more weight. For example, a poet may say Osman on instead of Osman ha for skies. Another example of poetic use is for special body parts like the eye. In poetry, you may see chashmon instead of chashmha for eyes. On is also used for a specific set of abstract nouns, particularly those related to time and human experience. A good example of this is rozgaron, which means eras or ages as they were lived or experienced by people. For this lesson, you don't need to worry about these, and we can cover these instances in a much later video once you get more advanced in the language. Going any deeper into these instances now will just confuse the heck out of you. In modern Dari, ha is pretty much used for both inanimate objects and animate or living things. So it would be just fine to say mard ha for men instead of mardan. Honestly, in everyday life, you are more likely to uncover mard ha than mardan. You are more likely to see mardan in something like a scholarly article. More examples, you can say bachaha for boys instead of bachagon, and parendaha for birds instead of parendagon. Now, in rapid natural speech, native speakers drop the H unless it makes the pronunciation awkward or harder. So instead of mezha, people will say meza or marda instead of mardha for men. However, when it comes to the plural of nouns such as sada, where the ending is a long ah sound, it is easier pronounced as sadaha instead of sadaa. The two long ah sounds don't really merge well. But that doesn't mean you won't hear it. You may hear some people saying sada ah. Another example is mullah. With this one as well, it's better to say mullah ha. There are also modifications that are made in colloquial Dari for ease of pronunciation. For words that end in the a sound, the a sound replaces the a sound. So the plural of bacha would be bacha. Words that end in the e sound, like chowki, which means chair, the e sound is replaced with ya. So the plural of chowki is chowkya. Chowkya is possible if someone is over enunciating, but in normal everyday speech, it sounds unnatural and stilted. You have to put in effort to clearly separate the e and a sounds. Words that end in the u sound, like choku, which means night, the u sound is replaced with wa. So choku in plural form is chokwa. Chokwa is less common and also sounds a bit stilted or over enunciated. At least to me, it sounds like someone is trying to say the formal chokuha very carefully, but still dropping the H. It's not the natural fluid pronunciation used by most native Dari speakers in a casual conversation. So, unlike in English, when a noun is preceded by a number, the singular and not the plural form of the noun is used in Dari. In fact, in spoken or colloquial Dari, we use a qualifier or counter word such as ta after the number and then the singular form of the noun. So two apples would not be deux save ha, it would be deux tal save. In more formal literary content, you would see deux save. The qualifier or counter word is not used. The number itself already tells us it's more than one, so making the noun plural is redundant in Dari. Ta is the most common in general purpose qualifier or counter word, but we do have others such as dona. Dona is used for small inanimate objects. So instead of saying dutose for apples, you can also say dudonase. For people, we use nafar. Two people would be dunafar. These qualifier or counter words are not always interchangeable. Some are used differently and they are used under different circumstances. I don't want to get into more into qualifier words on this video as that would deviate too much from this lesson about plurals. You'll also notice that native speakers will use ta or dona even if they are referring to one item. So for I ate an apple or I ate one apple, instead of yak se khordam, people will say yak ta or yak dona se khordam. So as I had mentioned in previous lessons, there's quite a bit of Arabic vocabulary or words that are used in Dari. Using Dari rules for forming plurals of these words is just fine. No one will get mad at you or laugh at you. Most Afghans follow this rule as well, especially in spoken Dari. But in order to be thorough in this lesson, I figured I should put out some information on this. Now, you will come across times where the Arabic plural is used for a word. This is especially true for fixed phrases related to formal topics. So, for example, human rights would use the Arabic plural for rights. So it would be حقوق بشر instead of حقهای بشر. Another example is the United Nations. In Dari, we would use the plural form of the Arabic word for nation. So it would be Malal Mutahed instead of Malat Hoye Mutahed. There are instances where Dari borrows an Arabic plural and uses it as a singular noun. The borrowed form is frozen and its grammatical number is reanalyzed in Dari. Here are some examples you will likely see. So information would be malumat. Another word for information, itila'at. Literature, adabiyat. Newspaper or the news, ahbar. Science, ulum. Sometimes for ease of pronunciation, an Arabic plural is used for a Dari word. For example, for the plural form of sabzi, a Dari word, sabzijat is used, which means vegetables or greens. Jat is actually an Arabic plural ending. By the way, sabzi also means spinach and Dari for obvious reasons. Another example is turshi, which means pickle. The plural form is turshijat. Again, the Arabic plural ending of jat is used. Here's a list of some of the most common Arabic words where you will see its Arabic plural used, and this is done mostly in a formal writing, news broadcast, or snobby relative who is showing off how posh or educated they are. A link to my website where these words are listed is in the description of this video. Now, except for some rare circumstances like fixed phrases related to formal topics, using the Dari plural forms for these words is not wrong. But I want to mention it because you will likely encounter the Arabic plural, and I don't want you to become confused as to why it's that way. I recommend treating these like the irregular plurals you find in English. Just memorize them and become familiar with the most common ones. It doesn't make sense to learn how Arabic plurals are made when learning Dari. In fact, you will likely drive yourself insane. So, with that being said, it's okay to use the Dari plural for Arabic words, but remember not to add Dari plural endings on top of the Arabic plurals. So, for example, Mewa jot ha is incorrect for Mewa, the plural of Mewa. Either use the Arabic plural of Mewa jot or the Dari plural Mewa ha. Don't double up. All right, now let's summarize. A suffix is added to the end of a noun to create the plural form in Dari. In modern Dari, ha is added for both animate and inanimate objects. In colloquial Dari, the H sound is usually dropped. For animate or living things, on is used in formal Dari. For certain words, because of its ending, for ease of pronunciation, a yaw or golf is used in front of the on. For example, aqal becomes aqayan and bacha becomes bachagon. For certain words, the Arabic plural is used, and the best thing to do with these is to treat them like irregulars are treated in the English language. Just memorize them. Also, except in rare circumstances like fixed phrases, using the Dari plural suffix is always an alternative option, even for these words. All right, so now we've come to the end of another lesson. Tashakar, or thanks for watching. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this.